Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks again for your patience. I'm Dr. Thomas O. Edwards, the acting chair of the Social Science Division. And this evening, we are presenting for you a program entitled The 5 M's, or M to the 5th Power. This program is sponsored by the Social Science Division, the Library Division, the President's Office, and the Student Government Association. To the ones of you who may be visiting Medgar College for the first time, welcome, and we hope that you enjoy the program this evening as well as enjoy the facilities at the institution. Medgar College is a very unique place in terms of its offering, in terms of the interactions of faculty and students at this institution. And I'm very proud to be a part of Medgar College for that purpose. In putting together this program and working with the students, it was really a fulfilling experience for me. And I've found that during my time at Medgar College, as long as I'm involved in activities, working with students outside of the classroom in particular, that I've had some of my most memorable experiences, whether working on a program such as this, whether playing basketball, participating in a fashion show, whatever the case may be, that Medgar College students are some of the best people in the world. And on that same note, that the program this evening is being done by students at Medgar College, that the students have worked very hard in putting together their various parts. Students, Michael Chance, Anna Jones, and Suzette Welch worked very ingeniously in putting together the posters that you see in the back, and it's just terrific. And I'm very happy and proud that we can always get student participation when it's time to do programs at Medgar College. As I mentioned, the title of this program is The 5 M's, or M to the 5th Power is the name I like to think of it as. And of course, with M to the 5th Power, we're talking about 5 men of African ancestry who made a particular contribution to the history of black people throughout the world. And that is our purpose this evening, is to examine these particular individuals in terms of their philosophies and looking particularly at the type of sacrifice that they made in putting issues forward for people of African ancestry. And really, when we think about the fact that each of these individuals made a decision that trying to move people of African ancestry ahead is more important than anything else in life. As you note, these persons, many of them did not have the type of life with their families because they were involved in a particular cause. Several of these persons, as you know, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, were violently killed. And again, these persons were interested in a cause. They could have taken the position that my family is important, I have children, and I must devote my time to them. But instead, they, very young, took time away from their young wives, from their children, in order to make this sacrifice, in order to put forward issues that affected people of African ancestry. And that is what we want to do this evening. We want you to sit and think in terms of what you can learn from the lives of these individuals. And again, our students who are participating are not professional actors in any sense. They work very hard in addition to doing their classwork, doing their other commitments such as work, such as family, in order to spend some extra time to try to put together this program. And that is the reason that we have this program, is to enlighten you in ways that will assist you in terms of your knowledge of what these individuals stood for. And again, we ask your patience, your indulgence in our program. We're not professionals. We're just trying to do our best, and we're just trying to get together a particular message for you. Okay, so we'll start our first portrayal, our first presentation, and that will be Medgar. Medgar Wiley Evers. And the reason that, well, those are particular reasons for organizing the program as it is that we're here at Medgar Evers College, so therefore we decided that it's only appropriate to begin with Medgar Evers, the man. Secondly, we were interested in beginning with Malcolm X because the widow of Malcolm X works here at this institution. However, I have not seen Dr. Shabazz yet. Hopefully she will be here moments later. And then we'll move on to Martin Luther King, and then fourthly to Marcus Garvey, and fifthly to Mandela. And I want you also to pay particular attention to the international scope of the program, because that is important in itself, that we're not here only celebrating African Americans, but we're talking about men of African ancestry. And at the same time, let me just mention that these particular persons are not the only ones that could have been celebrated. They're not even the only ones in terms of M's that could have been celebrated. We can even think of Bob Marley, for example, and the contributions that he has made to the world with his music. But however, just decided to start with these particular persons, and again, we realize that there aren't any women represented in the program, and again, that was a deliberate decision that we want to focus on these particular individuals, and at some future date that a program can be organized involving women. And as a matter of fact, as all of you know, that next month we do celebrate Black Women History Month, and there are programs that will be presented here in this auditorium and in the college, highlighting the contributions that Black women have made in the history of our societies. Okay, without further ado, we will begin with a presentation highlighting Medgar Wiley Evers, and the person who will be doing this primarily is Mr. Walter Mosley. Thank you.
Quite obvious, ladies and gentlemen, we have a few provocateurs in the audience, but we have an agenda to follow tonight, and we will not be distracted by the provocateurs. But before so doing, I would like to acknowledge a few members of our audience here tonight. First and foremost, Dean Barron, Miss Bartholomew, Gail, as she's now coming in, Mr. Tony Akeem, like I said, there are a few provocateurs in the audience here tonight. We will continue with our agenda, which is more important. And thank you folks for coming out here tonight. We have business to take care of here tonight. We cannot wait around for the courts and due process to do the job. Repeat, we cannot wait around for the courts and due process to do the job. If we really want our constitutional rights, our freedom, and our dignity, then we're going to have to go out into the street just like all these stooges did and take them. And so as a protest against the way the sheriff, the mayor, the police, the entire bigoted racist administration of this city treated our kids, I'm calling for a boycott. Starting tomorrow, we're taking the battle for our civil rights into the streets. And we are going to stay in the streets until we bring the house of Jim Crow to its knees. Like I said, starting tomorrow, we are taking the battle for our civil rights into the streets. We must prepare for the boycott like a military strategy, with every minute detail planned and every potential threat prepared for. As soon as the police take one group away, we drive the boycotters up in another car. The courts are not enough. Litigation is slow and expensive, and the police are tired. Also, the police and the people are tired of waiting. Is that right? Thank you. But the boycott is a success, and we intend to keep it up until the merchant, every merchant on this block goes broke if necessary. They can jail us, beat us up. It will not stop us. We will march, boycott, and picket until all the demands are legally ours are met. You know, last night they tried to kill us. If you have no problem, young man, the exit is out there. You may leave. But we're going to continue with our agenda. We will not be distracted. You know, they really tried to kill us last night. They figured, I suppose, run Medgar out of Mississippi, and the boycott dies. Run Medgar out of Mississippi, and all the little black darkies will come crawling back to the plantation. Well, brothers and sisters, I have another plan. They cannot burn us out. They cannot run us out. They cannot scare us out. Sorry, Silver Knights. Medgar and his family are not running anywhere. If it is marches they want, we'll give them marches. If it is picket lines you want, we'll give you picket lines. If it is demonstrations you want, we'll have church members, students, farmers, and sharecroppers jamming the streets, blocking the sidewalks, anything it takes to get the job done. Now I want every so-called leaders of Mississippi to know. I want the sheriff to know it, the governor, the mayor, every segregationist in this state to know that we are coming back to the streets, not by the hundreds, not by the hundreds, by the thousands. And we intend to stay in the streets until there is equality for every man, every woman, and child in the state of Mississippi. The boycott will continue. Thank you. This was a reading from Medgar. As we know, he died in 1963, and students, we got together, and I think we did a good job. Thank you. Since you wouldn't give me the applause, thank you.
Okay, yes, as you can see from Walter's presentation, some of the ideals and some of the activities in which Medgar was involved, the same Medgar for whom this institution is named for. Therefore, it's important for all of you. Medgar put his life on the line trying to get people registered to vote in Jackson, Mississippi. And the question is that the least that we can do, the very least that we can do, is to make certain that we are registered voters and that we do intelligently go to the poll every time there is an election. We owe that much to Medgar demand. Okay, there is an announcement which I'd like to make at this time, and that is Medgar College will have a benefit for Black History Month, and come celebrate. That is, select the event in which you want to participate. The events are Mardi Gras Carnival. That's on Saturday, March 4th from 3 to 8 p.m. and the admission fee is $5. There's a jazz concert on Saturday, March 18th from 7 to 10 p.m. and tickets are $10 and $15 for that event. You may send check or money orders payable to Medgar Evers College Library, 1150 Carroll Street, Brooklyn, New York, 11225. Or for information, you can call 718-270-4873. So we ask you to support these additional activities in celebration of Black History Month. We're going to continue, and as part of the program, we were hoping to have Miss Malika Adam Johnson. Is she in the audience? Okay, well, evidently she wasn't able to come. She did not arrive. She's an acquaintance. She was an acquaintance of Medgar Evers, the man. She lived in Jackson, Mississippi. She lived in Mississippi near where he lived. And as a matter of fact, just moments before he was brutally assassinated, that she was in conversation with him. And we did want her to be here to make some remarks. But perhaps if she comes later, we will try to include her in the program. Okay, so we'll continue with our next presentation, and that will be a multimedia presentation of Malcolm X. And that is done by Tony Lynch, our president of the Student Government Association. Okay, welcome, Tony.
$22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the trends in these political elections. They see that the whites are so evenly divided that every time they vote, the race is so close that they got to go back and count the votes all over again. Which means that any bloc, any minority that controls a block of votes is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who goes to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one that has the power. You can keep Johnson in Washington, D.C., or you can send him back to his Texas cotton patch. You're the one who sent Kennedy to Washington. You're the one who's put the present Democratic administration in Washington, D.C. The whites were evenly divided. It was the fact that you threw 80% of your vote behind the Democrats that put the Democrats in the White House. When you see this, you can see that the Negro vote is the key factor. And despite the fact that you're in a position to be the determining factor, what do you get out of it? The Democrats have been in Washington, D.C. only because of the Negro vote. They've been down there 4 years, and all other legislation that they wanted to bring up, they've brought up and gotten it out of the way. And now they bring up you. You put them first, and they put you last. Because you're a chump, a political chump. In Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives, there are 257 who are Democrats, only 177 are Republicans. In the Senate, 67 are Democrats, 33 are Republicans. The party that you backed controls 2/3 of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And still they can't keep the promise they made to you. Because you're a chump. Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race. And what kind of alibi do they come up with? They try and pass the buck to the Dixiecrats. Now, back in the days when you were deaf, dumb, and blind, ignorant, politically immature, naturally you went along with that. But today, as your eyes come open and you develop political maturity, you're able to see and think for yourself. You can see that a Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise. You look at the structure of this government that controls this country. It's controlled by 16 senatorial committees and 20 congressional committees. Of the 16 senatorial committees that run this government, 10 of them are in the hands of Southern segregationists. Of the 20 congressional committees that control this government, 12 of them are in the hands of Southern segregationists. And they want to tell you and me that the South lost the war. You today are in the hands of a government of segregationists, racists, white supremacists who belong to the Democratic Party but disguise themselves as Dixiecrat. A Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat. Whoever runs the Democrats is also the father of the Dixiecrats, and the father of them all is sitting in the White House. I say, and I'll say again, you've got a president who's nothing but a Southern segregationist from the state of Texas. They'll lynch you in Texas just as quick as they'll lynch you in Mississippi. The only thing is that they'll lynch you in Texas with a Texas accent, and in Mississippi, they'll lynch you with a Mississippi accent. And the first thing the cracker does when he comes into power is he invite all the Negro leaders to come and have coffee to show that he's all right. And those Uncle Toms can't resist the urge to go for coffee. They come away from the coffee table telling you that he's all right because he's from the South. And because he's from the South, he knows how to deal with the South. Well, look at the logic they're using. What about Eastland? He's from the South. If Johnson can deal with the South, if Johnson is a good man because he comes from the South and he can deal with the South, why not vote in Eastland? Eastland can deal with the South better than Johnson. Or I say you've been misled. You've been had. You've been took. I was in Washington a couple of weeks ago while the senators were filibustering, and I noticed in the back of the Senate a huge map. And on this map it showed the distribution of Negroes in America. And surprisingly, the same senators that were involved in the filibuster were from the states where there were the most Negroes. Why were they filibustering civil rights legislation? Because the civil rights legislation is supposed to guarantee voting rights to the Negroes in those states. And those senators from those states know that if those Negroes can vote, those senators are down the drain. The representatives from those states are down the drain. And in the Constitution of this country, it has a stipulation wherein whenever the rights, the voting rights of a people in a certain district are violated, the representatives from that particular district, according to the Constitution, is supposed to be expelled from Congress. Now, if this particular aspect of the Constitution was enforced, why you wouldn't have a cracker in Washington, D.C.? But what would happen when you expel the Dixiecrats? You're also expelling the Democrats. When you destroy the power of the Dixiecrats, you're destroying the power of the Democratic Party. So how in the hell can the Democratic Party in the South actually side with you in sincerity when all of its power base is in the South? These Northern Democrats are in cahoots with the Southern Democrats. They're playing a giant con game, a political con game. You know how it goes. One of them come with you and make like he's for you. The other one makes like he's against you. He's in cahoots with the other one. Excuse me, let me do that again. You know how it goes. One of them comes and make believes like he's for you, and he's in cahoots with the one that's not for you. Why? Because neither one of them is for you. So this is a con game, and this is what they've been doing to us for all these years. First thing Johnson did when he got off the plane when he became president, he asked, "Where's Dickie?" You know who Dickie is. Dickie's the old Southern cracker, Richard Russell. Lyndon B. Johnson's best friend is the one who's been spearheading filibustering against civil rights legislation. You tell me how in the hell he's gonna be Lyndon Johnson's best friend. How can Johnson be his best friend and your friend too? Nah, the man's too tricky, especially if his friend is still Dickie. Whenever the Negroes keep the Democrats in power, they're keeping the Dixiecrats in power. And this true, a vote for a Democrat is a vote for a Dixiecrat. I know you don't like me saying that. I'm not the kind of person to say what you like. I'm gonna tell you the truth whether you like it or not. Up here in the North, you have the same thing. The Democratic Party do it a different way. They got a thing they call gerrymandering. They maneuver us out of power, and even when you vote, they fix it so you're voting for nobody. They got you going and coming. In the South, they're outright political wolves. In the North, they're political foxes. A fox and a wolf are both canine. They both from the dog family. Thank you.
Okay, we're waiting for the film to be set up. We plan to show just a bit of Malcolm X on film, and you can see from the film, I hope all of you are in a position where you can see, and you can see just how great Tony was in imitating Malcolm X. So let's hear it for Tony once again. Okay, and while we're waiting for the film, why don't we hear some music? And there is a particular one that was related to the first presentation that we'd like for you to hear. And just let me get the record, and we'll put it on. Oswald. Oh, is it? What is that?
Saturday, February 27th, 1965. A man who in the 39 years of his life changed the hearts and minds of countless people. His was a stormy life, as was his death. At birth, he was named Malcolm Little. He rose to worldwide attention with the name Malcolm X. He died with the name El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz. Personal political philosophy is black nationalism, which means that the black man should control the politics of his own community and control the politicians who are in his own community. My personal economic philosophy is also black nationalism, which means that the black man should have a hand in controlling the community. Not so much attention as Malcolm X, who was one of the most electrifying speakers this country has ever produced. Some of the things he said rocked his contemporaries and his adversaries. He developed into what he became from a turbulent childhood. Born in Omaha, Nebraska, raised in Lansing, Michigan, the son of a Baptist preacher who followed Marcus Garvey and was brutally murdered in Malcolm's youth. Malcolm's school ambitions were crushed by a white teacher who told him to be realistic about being a nigger and forget about being a lawyer and learn to do something with his hands instead. And so he floundered. He went to Roxbury, Massachusetts to live with his sister Ella. He flirted with crime. He got a job on the railroad, washing dishes, loading supplies, and selling sandwiches. Working on Pullman trains enabled him to travel to the big cities, Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York. He became intoxicated with life in those big cities. Between rail trips, he bought himself zoot suits with the reaped pleat and the stuffed cuff. He conked his hair. He settled in Harlem finally and began associating with a very fast crowd in that town. He started smoking reefers, selling drugs, selling women. He started using cocaine and he developed a habit. He drifted lower and lower and he was finally arrested on a robbery rap. In January of 1946, at 21 years of age, he was sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison. Big Red, as he was known, started his life in the Charlestown State Prison. It was the same year that Jackie Robinson was becoming the first black man to play Major League Baseball, an event that Malcolm and his fellow inmates celebrated behind bars. Malcolm was cold and belligerent in prison. He was soon dubbed Satan. Few would mess with him. But through the visits and letters of one of his brothers, he began to change. He was exposed to the teachings of a little-known man in Detroit named Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm's brother told Malcolm that his predicament was a direct result of one source, the white man. The message was, avoid the white devil and become independent. Clean yourself up, pick yourself up. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't eat pork, don't fornicate, and especially be proud of yourself and your past. It prodded young Malcolm to do what he hadn't dreamt of doing for years, read. It was a painful process. He started with the dictionary, literally reading each page. Then grammar books. Then novels, textbooks, encyclopedias, history, philosophy, psychology, philology, geography, and on, into the night, every night, reading until the wee hours, past lights out. Reading in poor light damaged his eyes to the point that he had to wear glasses for the rest of his life. But he learned, and he grew. When he left prison in 1952, he was completely changed. He had a new perspective and a new attitude, as well as a desire to grow in the service of Elijah Muhammad. He dropped his last name, identifying it as a slave name. He replaced it with X, and he joined the Nation of Islam. Within the next 2 years, a lot happened. The United States Supreme Court handed down its historic Brown decision of 1954. It ruled that separate but equal schooling was inherently unequal and must end with all deliberate speed. And as that momentous verdict was being digested by America, Malcolm was back in the streets of Harlem, but now a minister of the Nation of Islam, assigned here by Elijah Muhammad to open up the nation's 7th temple. Malcolm fished for members at rallies that were being held by other organizations. It was a slow but very sure process. By now it was 1955, the year that the Civil Rights Movement ignited. It began in Montgomery, Alabama, with the Rosa Parks incident, and it spread throughout the nation. A young Baptist preacher at the forefront named the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Picket demonstrations were occurring everywhere in the Southland and attracting heavy media coverage. Meanwhile, the Nation of Islam continued to grow. Malcolm was now Elijah Muhammad's national organizer and spokesman. He organized bazaars to attract new members and raise money. He turned out the first edition of the nation's newspaper, Muhammad Speaks, the sale of which brought in more money to develop the growing numbers of temples that were springing up with Malcolm's assistance. Malcolm read voraciously. He haunted bookstores like Louis Michel's National Memorial African Bookstore, located on 7th Avenue between 125th and 126th Streets. It helped him polish his astounding skills as a public speaker. It was his chief device to recruit members. It also helped him to deal with the news media that had begun to take notice.
Abraham Lincoln tricked the so-called Negro into thinking that he was free, and when you read some of the books that were written by the so-called Negro historian J.E. Rogers, one of his books, God, the Africa's Gift to America, he points out plainly how Abraham Lincoln did nothing but trick trick the Negro, fool the Negro, and use the Negro, the same as every other politician who has been in the White House has been tricking and fooling and using the Negro as a political football ever since America has been America.
The picket demonstrations in the South continued to escalate, and so did the development of the Nation of Islam, developing particularly in Harlem, where large crowds were now turning out to hear this fiery young man, who had an extraordinary way with words and ideas. He sometimes spoke for hours, extemporaneously, but the attention of a standing crowd never faltered.
Our desire, our prayer, that we can have a peaceful, intelligent rally here this afternoon. But at the same time, we see that they have surrounded us with many of their own agents, in uniform and out of uniform, who have spent much time here in Harlem posing as peace officers and at the same time breaking up the peace of black people. So we hope that they will be peaceful and we will be peaceful. We are here to tell you to love the white man. You have come to the wrong place. And those of you who think that you perhaps came here to hear us tell you to turn the other cheek to the brutality of the white man, I say again, you came to the wrong place. But no matter what happens, we don't teach you to turn the other cheek. We don't teach you to turn the other cheek in the South, and we don't teach you to turn the other cheek in the North. We teach you to obey the law. We teach you to carry yourselves in a respectable way. But at the same time, we teach you that anyone who puts his hand on you, do your best to see that he doesn't put it on anybody else. You know what we take for airplanes bringing trucks into this country? The white man brings it in. The white man brings it to home. The white man makes you a drug addict. The white man then puts you in jail when he catches you using drugs. Who is it that controls the prostitution in Harlem? It's the white man. Who controls the large sales of whiskey and wine? It's the white man. You don't have any distillery. You don't own Shenley's. You don't own Oil or Seagram's. You don't put the seal on that bottle of whiskey. It's the white man. Who gives you the deck of cards and the dice that you use to gamble with? It's the white man. And after he sell them to you, he gets you with him and puts you in jail for using them. They're trapped in a vicious cycle of poverty, of ignorance, of apathy, of disease, and of death. And they have these undercover Negro leaders coming to Harlem telling you and me that times are getting better. Your times will never get better until you make them better. We know the same thing that goes on right here at home. They will let a prostitute buy as long as she come back to them later on. They encourage her to be a prostitute. They take bribes from her for being a prostitute. Or they'll take it in cash, or they'll take it in trade. Well, we're here to tell them it has to come to a stop. Anytime you find any white man taking advantage of your woman, disrespecting her, you within your right to do the same thing to him that he's been doing to you. You can't take a white woman in a white neighborhood. You can't grab a white woman in a white neighborhood. You can't even walk through a white neighborhood with a white woman. Well, what do you look like letting this blue-eyed thing walk around here with our women? Since fighting the enemy of America, you'll fight just like that. Whether he tell you to fight in Korea or fight in Berlin or fight in the South Pacific. As soon as he says stick him, you'll fight anybody he points the finger at. But right here in this country, under Yamo, with two-legged white dogs, sticking four-legged dogs on your and my mother, you and I don't know how to fight. Sticking dogs on your and my sister, and you and I don't know how to fight. Sticking dogs on our children and dogs on our babies, and you don't know how to fight. You can't fight fight nor bow because the white man say bow so fight. In the South, you are segregated by that dog. In the North, you integrated with this dog. And it's no different. I hope you're not getting too wet. Well, the dog is their best friend. The dog is their closest relative. They got the same kind of hair, the same kind of skin, and the same kind of smell. Oh, yeah. And every place is power of Moses. You know, you can send him to Washington or you can send him to Puerto Rico. And because he knows it, he speaks with a loud voice, like a black man. And when he speaks with a loud voice, like a black man, the white man calls him a racist. So he sounds too much like a Muslim. Simply because he's trying to tell a white man where it's at. When the Honorable Elijah Muhammad finishes opening your and my eyes and making it possible for us to see this white man like he really is, we don't have to worry about us integrating with him. We don't want to be around that old pale thing. We don't want to be around that old pale thing. We don't want to integrate with that old pale thing. We don't want to sleep next to that old pale thing so we can do without it. You find that old pale thing laying out in the sun, trying to get to look like you. Pale thing. You find him using man cave, trying to look like you. That old pale thing. That old sickly looking thing. And today we see him like he is. There was a time when we used to drool in the mouth over white people. We thought they were pretty because we were blind. We were dumb. We couldn't see them as they are. But since the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has come and brought us to the religion of Islam, which has cleaned us up and made us so we can see for ourselves, now we can see that old pale thing to look exactly as he looks. Nothing but an old pale thing.
The news media found Malcolm both frightening and irresistible. He was hit with a constant stream of questions from every quarter on most any subject involving race. He was pitted in several broadcast debates with black leaders and white. Some white reporters, however, learned from listening to Malcolm.
This was one of the things that always shook me about Malcolm, is how fundamentally American he was in his outlook and his aspirations, despite his basic quarrel with American society. Because after all, what was his quarrel with American society? His quarrel with American society was the fact that the black man had been excluded from his rightful place. And, you know, there are a lot of small things about Malcolm that were so American, and this is something that the white man didn't understand. And after all he was asking for was a piece of action for the black man. And the black man to be treated as a human being. And that is a cipher. And this, of course, is what this country is supposed to be all about.
Malcolm's fury was directed at the same enemy that Dr. King's movement in the South was attacking, white racism. But they had different ideas about dealing with the violence of whites upon blacks.
Well, I made this good open.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. May I call this out? Understand, Dr. Shabazz is in the audience, and we'll ask her to come forward, and if she would, and make a few marks about the life of Malcolm X for us. This is Dr. Shabazz, our Director of Communications and Public Relations of Edwards College, and a widow of Malcolm X.
Do what? I don't want anyone. No, who said that? Who cut him? Not his daughter. That whole project is on him. That's it.
How are you doing? It's just that I left work and came back, and I was going to sit in the back because I thought Tony was going to reenact something on Malcolm, so I came to support him. Please don't take my picture. I didn't do it up or nothing. No, Tony, don't do that to me. You know. What am I supposed to say?
Just whatever you like.
One of the things I think we should remember is the people Malcolm was working with, the fact that Malcolm was a leader that came from the people directly. He was not the establishment's leader. And I think that must be understood. He came from the people, and one of the things is that his program was in two parts. And it is unfortunate that a lot of people didn't understand the two-part program. And the first part of the program was basically nationalistic, that people were ashamed of who they were and refusing to accept where they came from and that sort of thing. So that to have a love for self and the way you look, to have an appreciation for your past, to be proud of your ancestors and the sacrifices they made so that whatever potential benefits in the society you have, that they sacrificed dearly for them. All you have to do is examine the triangular trade and that whole document, the Asiento, and some other kinds of things that I'm sure some of our students study in class. And the second part was that after fully understanding and appreciating yourself and your lineage, that you began to cooperate, collaborate, and coordinate with other people regardless to their political, social, economic, or their ethnicity. And it is unfortunate that a lot of people stayed on the first level and didn't understand that the first level was supposed to be a stepping stone to the second level. But I think it's better to be at the first level than never to have entered the first level. Because one of the things is that we see people every day who claim that they are people and they just like people regardless to ethnicity, but the African diaspora is always excluded from their agenda. And it was primarily for not only blacks, but whites and others to understand that if man is made in the image of God, then surely the African diaspora was part of that humanity and was to be included rather than excluded. One of the things is that people always say, you know, well, Malcolm X, you know, I don't know, you know, he hated the white man and this, that, and the other. He didn't hate the white man. I mean, Malcolm was of mixed blood himself. He did dislike the behavior of some whites, and we have to understand that. One of the things is that a lot of people really didn't deal with racism. And I can remember when I first graduated from high school and went south to go to school and encountered all of the racism. My parents really didn't want to deal with it. And I understand now that they were operating out of fear. They kind of thought maybe it was something I did. And Malcolm, I met him when I was a student nurse. When I left Tuskegee, my father had graduated from Tuskegee, and my mother graduated from Alabama State Normals Teachers College. That's what it was called at that time. It is now Alabama State Teachers College. And they were from the South, and and surely if I was to talk about segregation and discrimination, who should I talk to about it except my parents? But they were fearful, and a lot of people that are part of the African diaspora are fearful. And we find that a lot of us have been so indoctrinated that we tend to be an extension of the dominant society's wish or whatever we think somebody would appreciate, we do, although it might be against us. And when the major thrust should be to have the African diaspora included in world society. I just came back from Lusaka, Zambia at a world conference, and some of the decisions that were made and some of the dialogue, you would never believe that some of the people who were talking looked like you and I. Sometimes people don't necessarily defend themselves. To defend yourself is a human right. It is granted by God. It is also legislated by man, but a lot of us still feel to operate in the defense of the African diaspora is to be against whomever. And I am very pleased that I met Malcolm. I'm very pleased that I had an opportunity to be a part of what he was a part of, because it was through him that I learned about the world. When I was growing up in Detroit, Michigan, I went to school. My folks were Methodists. We went to church on Sunday. My father had a store. My mother worked in the store, and my father complained always of how tired he was. But that was basically in going to the various meetings in the Booker T. Washington Trade Association, which sprung out of that a group of folks who started the Small Business Association. And it was the pilot project for the same Small Business Association in Washington, D.C. So my folks were really very much involved. But I would imagine afraid like not only people at that time, but afraid like a lot of people now. My mother said, I don't want to hear anything about that black stuff, and she was black as night. I really couldn't even understand that. And everybody I knew, when you really looked at it, was catching hell. But, somehow you're supposed to sit there and wait there, and some savior was going to come and carry us off. And so here Malcolm was direct, and frightened the daylights out of a lot of people, but also had the support of a lot of people. And I can remember after his assassination, and someone found me. My address has not always been advertised, and I was to make Hajj, because he was supposed to have been appointed as a member of the Hajj court. And I had to go to Switzerland and have my wardrobe made, because it certainly was different from the kind of things we wear here. And it was just a whole group of folks out there, and I said, oh my God, I went to sleep, and I didn't see who was on the plane, because, those people, they were all out there waiting. And come to find out it was a group of supporters of Malcolm, with not one black face at all. In Switzerland, they said that he was their leader. He was the only one that had given them the will to take hold of what they really should take hold of and be part of world civilization. And I said, boy, I wished I had a picture of all of you to show them in the United States, because they say Malcolm is racist. And they said, how could anybody call him a racist when his parents were descendants? I mean, he was a descendant of slaves. That people should do what he's doing, if not for themselves, for generations that are coming on. And I now look out here at the lack of justice and parity. And I look at our young peoples in schools who are not being taught properly and who doubt themselves. And the only thing I can say, because I don't have the strength of the will of Malcolm to cut through all of that, is to say that I hope and pray one day that our children will be educated because they are part of the human family and not treated as they are treated. And that is all of our responsibility, regardless to ethnicity. Thank you very much.
As I mentioned before, that we as a African American community must be aware of our past leaders. We must also understand the type of honor, the type of tribute that we must pay not only to them, but also to their family members. And in this case, we're very fortunate at Medgar College to have Dr. Betty Shabazz here with us. And by the same token, if you have the opportunity to meet any of the other persons, relatives, widows, children of slain leaders, such as Mrs. Evers, who often has come to Medgar College, Coretta Scott King, etc., that keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, that these are women whose husbands gave their lives to a cause, and they were not able to be there with them so many times. So as a community, we really owe those persons so much. So let's have another round of applause for Dr. Betty Shabazz. Okay, we shall continue with our program, and our next presentation will be on Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and Dr. King will be portrayed by Gregory Knowles.
Almost 2,000 years ago, the question was asked, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? Many hundred years later, the question was not whether any good thing can come out of the Negro race, but instead, ain't nothing good could come from those niggers. In 1929, on January the 27th, the womb of Miss Alberta King said, just wait and see. A baby was born on that day. It was a man-child. He was given the name Martin Luther King, Jr. And I am he tonight. Life was not easy for me in the South as a black man. At the age of 6, I encountered my first horror of racial discrimination. I did not understand why those white people didn't like black people. So I rushed home to ask my mother. Mom told me about the fears and the cruelty of some people. As she entered her explanation of slavery and segregation, she said to me, don't let these things make you feel as though you are no good. You are as good as anyone else, and don't you forget that. Each Sunday I would watch my father in the pulpit as he preached his sermon, and to my amazement, his sermon captured the imagination of the people. I said to myself, I want to be just like my dad. As time passed by, I made my first trip to the north in 1944. I got a job picking tobacco. There I saw the shadow during my first encounter with racial discrimination could take many forms and did not cast a dark shadow not only on the South, but everywhere I went. It was a thief and a destroyer. Realizing that the shadow could make me feel worthless if I allow it to. But oh, I kept my mother's words in my heart. You are as good as anybody else. And don't you forget it. Upon entering Morehouse College, I could not decide what I wanted to do with my life. However, I could not forget the mission that I have set for myself to attack racial injustice. Certainly, though, whatever road I chose, I must equip myself to achieve this goal. After admiring the president of the college, Dr. Mays, he was a very intellectual and a spiritual man. I decided to enter the ministry. God allowed me to preach my first sermon at the age of 17. He was so pleased after I delivered my sermon. He didn't tell me, but I saw it, the expression on his face. In 1947, I was ordained and named assistant pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church. My quest to wipe out racial injustice was like a hungry lion in search of food. In grad school, I searched through the writings of great philosophers. I even went to Philadelphia to hear Dr. Marty K.I. Johnson's sermon, Defeating Violence Through the Power of Love, using Gandhi methods. I returned to college. I gathered all the books about Gandhi I could find. After reading about Gandhi, my heart leaped with joy like a woman who had just given birth to a newborn child. My search was over. Love could do it, I said. Love could oppose injustice and win. This love was not an ordinary love like a parent to a child or a husband to a wife, but it was God's love. The core of my philosophy was going to be a living, unshakable faith in God. A faith so strong that I allowed God to guide me through situations of extreme crisis. I felt that without this faith, the fullest life was impossible, and that a person was really incompetent, not incompetent, to use nonviolence as a political technique. I came to realize that the only way to destroy violence was to put one's faith in God. With this faith, one could walk through the dark nights with the radiant conviction that all things conspire for good for those who love the Lord. Love is the only force which can remove hate. After finishing schooling, I was called to a little church down in Montgomery, Alabama. I started preaching there. Things were going well in that church. It was a marvelous experience. But one day, a year later, a lady by the name of Rosa Parks decided that she wasn't going to take any longer this foolishness. she stayed on a bus seat. It was the beginning of a movement where 50,000 black men and women refused absolutely to ride the city buses. And we walked together 381 days. Negroes had to learn to stick together. We sent out a call. No Negroes rode the bus. It was one of the most amazing things I have ever seen in my life. The people of Montgomery asked me to serve as the spokesman. And as the president of the new organization, the Montgomery Improvement Association came into being to lead the boycott. I couldn't say no. And then we started our struggle together.
Recommends that the 11-month-old protest against the city buses will be called off, and that the Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama will return to the buses on a non-segregated basis.
Yes, what you have seen there is some of the things that our people went through. We were treated like dogs, like cats. As a matter of fact, we were not treated like those guys, because if you look at those animals today, some of them eat steaks and onions. But oh, I believe we were treated like the dirt. When the rain falls from the heavens upon the earth, that's how we were treated. But we didn't stop there. We realized that we had a lot more to accomplish. So I sat down with my associates and I told them we need to get equality in this nation. We need to get equal opportunity for jobs, equal opportunity for housing. We need to get this segregated in the schools. We need to get where black man and white man will be able to sit down and be able to learn in brotherhood. That's what I told them. So we planned a march. Everybody from every race. It was a day not only the nation of the United States, or should I say America, will remember, but it's a day that the entire world will not forget. We hire buses, cars. The trains decided not to take anybody else about the marches, and we march. And as we got there in Washington, D.C., I want to tell you, I had a dream. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been snared in the flame of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro people is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacle of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and find himself in exile in his own land. So we come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we come to our nation capital to cash a check. When the architect of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that Americans have defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, Americans have given the Negro people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vault of opportunity of this nation. So we come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hollow spot to remind America of the fears and urgency of now. This is the time to engage in the luxury of the cooling off, or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and deserted valleys of segregation to the sunlit path of racial injustice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make real justice for all of God's people. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating summer of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hoped that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation return to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship right. The whirlwind of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something I must say to you, my people, who stands on the warm threshold which lead into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to be degenerated into physical violence. Again and again, we must ride to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which have engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust in all white people. For many of our white brethren, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up in our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And if we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotel of the cities. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro basic mobility is from a small ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating, "For whites only." We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes that he has nothing to which to vote for. No, no, We cannot be satisfied. And we will not be satisfied until justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulation. Some of you have come from fresh, narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from area where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. But you have been the veterans of created suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and the ghetto of our northern city, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meanings of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and sons of former slaves owners will be able to sit together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama with his vicious racists, with his governor having his lip drifting with the word of interposition and nullification, one day right down in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as brothers and sisters. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be clean, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discord of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, this to thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my father died, land of the pilgrim pride. Let every mountain, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a true great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hills of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountain of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rocky of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the capricious slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stony Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee.
Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to ring, we will let it ring from every valley and every hamlet, from every state and every city. We will be able to speed up the day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestant and Catholic, will be able to join hands in singing the words of the old Negro. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Gregory, come on, take a bow. Take a bow, Gregory. Take a bow, Gregory. Just take a bow. Just take a bow. Okay, very good. The filter comes back. Yeah, this is mine. Okay, man. Okay. Okay, yes, here. Gregory, here's your paper. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll let them cut it. Let them cut it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, so you can see from Gregory's presentation the amount of work that he put into it. And once again, that's why I say that it's just great to be part of Medgar, part of to be a faculty member, to see the students perform in the way they do. And in many circles, one hears that as a teacher, you're a student, and as a student, you learn. And so as a teacher, I really bow my head to the students this evening. They're very fantastic. Okay, let me just announce to you that the film that you're seeing, that these are part of the collection of Medgar College Library Media Services, and that at any time, if you would like to see them further, that you may do so. These particular ones that you're seeing, as well as collections in other areas, in the civil rights, other historical films, are all available in media services. And also in the lobby, once the program is done, that their books are being sold from the bookstore, books of all the persons in which we are honoring this evening, and which we are making the particular tributes to. So if you would like to read further, those books are available, and you may want to purchase them. Okay, we'll continue. I'm just overwhelmed. There's just so much. I'm just so happy to see the enthusiasm of the participants, that you, such a great audience, and I'm just totally overwhelmed with the program, the way it's going. Okay, we'll continue with our next person, and our next person that we're going to pay honor to, and that is Marcus Garvey. And first of all, I'd like to present to you Firm Selassie II from the Nyambinge Theocracy Churchical Order, and he will introduce Maxwell Hayward, the presenter for Marcus Garvey. Okay, Firm.
Gurmawi, Kidamawi, Ababa Jonai, Nigo Sachin, Yaula Sachin, Ja, Rastafari. I bring you warm, fraternal, and revolutionary greetings in the name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie, the conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, elect of Himself, the light of the world, and power of the Holy Trinity. I also bring you warm, fraternal, and revolutionary greetings on behalf of the African race, those at home and those abroad. Those in South Africa who are still fighting for our own liberation, those in Jamaica, those in Nicaragua, those in Guyana and Trinidad and Grenada, and those here in the United States of America, where the history and the testament of racism and bigotry and the level of resentment towards the progress of our people has really have that really toll on what we are doing here. Marcus Garvey, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela are equally important in our struggle as a race for human rights, equal rights, liberation, and the right to shape our own destiny. But this evening, I'll be just relating to you briefly about Marcus Garvey and the importance of Marcus Garvey from the whole perspective of a Rastaman. To the Rastafari community, universally, Marcus Garvey is regarded and accepted as a prophet. For those of us who are very much involved in the history of the Rastafari movement, it is recorded that in 1929, while making a speech in a park downtown Kingston, Marcus Garvey said, and I quote, "Look to Africa for the crowning of a black king, for the day of our redemption is at hand." On the 2nd of November, 1930, Rastafari Makonnen, who is a direct descendant of the lineage of King David and King Solomon, ascend to the throne of Ethiopia and take the name Haile Selassie, which means the power of the Holy Trinity, as well as the titles, conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, elect of himself, light of the world, and defender of the faith. What that means to us as African people, and as Rastafari people, and as African people in general, that means Marcus Garvey represents the new level of consciousness, the new level of rising to the heights of self-consciousness and self-awareness in the glorifying of our own heroes. I remembered that when Marcus Garvey, before he came to the United States, he had traveled throughout Central America, and he had assessed the social, the economic, and the political realities of the African race. And from what Marcus Garvey saw, and from what we are here seeing today as students, as scholars, as workers, and as community activists, there represents and still remain that same level of colonialism that has been unleashed upon our people. We need only to look in our communities and see the level of police brutality as it exists today. We need only to look in our communities and see the lack of adequate housing and medical facility, and also the continued miseducation of the African race. These were some of the things that Marcus Garvey came to remedy, and Marcus Garvey was so successful in achieving these goals that Marcus Garvey had an organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the African Community Leagues, which had African people right over the world united on that level of consciousness. But particularly important that I'd like to share with you is the speech which Marcus Garvey gave from Atlanta General Penitentiary. And this is a speech which our own patriot and our own leader gave to the world after realizing that whenever the African race choose to shape its own destinies, there are others among us as well as others on the outside of our community which will spend no effort or will spend all the energy that they have in trying to thwart what we have to do. But this is the views and visions from Atlanta General Penitentiary. My work is just begun, and when the history of my suffering is complete, then future generations of Negroes will have in their hands the guides by which they shall know the sins of the 20th century. And I know you too believe in time, and we shall wait patiently for 200 years, if need be, to face our enemies through our posterity. After my enemies are satisfied, in life or death, I shall come back to you to serve even as I had served before. In life, I shall be the same. In death, I shall be a terror to the foes of Negro liberty. If death has power, then count on me in death to be the real Marcus Garvey I would like to be. If I may come in an earthquake or a cyclone or plague or pestilence, or as God would have me, then be assured that I would never desert you and make your enemies triumph over you. Would I not go to hell 1,000,000 times for you? If I die in Atlanta, my work shall then only begin, but I shall live in the physical or spiritual sense to see the day of Africa's glory. When I am dead, wrap the mantle of the red, black, and green around me, for in the new life I shall rise with Jah, grace and blessing to lead the millions of the heights of triumph with the colors that you well know. Look for me all around you. Look for me in the whirlwind or the storm, for with Jah grace I shall come and bring with me countless millions of black slaves who have died in America and the West Indies, and the millions in Africa to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. The civilization of today is gone drunk and crazy with its power, and by such it seeks through injustice, fraud, and lies to crush the unfortunate. But if I am apparently crushed by the system of influence and misdirected power, my cause shall rise again to plague the conscience of the corrupt. For this I am satisfied, and for you I repeat, I am glad to suffer and even die. Again I say, cheer up, for better days are ahead. I shall write the history that will inspire the millions that are coming, and leave the posterity of our enemies to reckon with the host for the deeds of their fathers. With God dearest blessing, I leave you for a while. So like Marcus Garvey, I said, arise, my people, and accomplish what you will. One God, one aim, one destiny, one universal black supremacy. Thank you. I'd just like to say that we have another speaker here, a student of Medgar College, who has, over the years, demonstrated the ability and the eloquence and the constructiveness and the consciousness to relate. He is Maxwell Aoud, former president of the Caribbean Student Association, and here with the Adafi staff, the associate editor of Adafi newspaper. Let's give a round of applause to Maxwell Aoud, another son of Garvey.
The speech I will read tonight was delivered on January 1st, 1922, on the Emancipation Day at Liberty Hall, New York City. 49 years ago, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring 4 million Negroes in this country free. Several years prior to that, Queen Victoria of England signed the Emancipation Proclamation that set at liberty hundreds of thousands of West Indian Negro slaves. West Indian Negroes celebrate their emancipation on the first day of August of every year. The American Negroes celebrate their emancipation on the 1st of January of every year. Tonight, we are here to celebrate the emancipation of the slaves in this country. We are the descendants of the men and women who suffered in this country for 250 years under that barbarous, that brutal institution known as slavery. You, who have not lost trace of your history, will recall the fact that over 300 years ago, your forebears were taken from the great continent of Africa and brought here for the purpose of using them as slaves. Without mercy, without any sympathy, they worked our forebears. They suffered, they bled, they died. But with their sufferings, with their blood, which they shed in their death, they had a hope that one day, that posterity would be free. And we are assembled here tonight as the children of that hope. I trust each and every one of you, therefore, will realize that you have a duty which is incumbent upon you, a duty that you must perform, because our forebears who suffered, who bled, who died had hopes that are not yet completely realized. They hoped that we as their children would be free, but they also hoped that their country from whence they came would also be free to their children, their grandchildren, and great-grandchildren at some future time. It is for the freedom of that country, that motherland of ours, that 4.5 million Negroes, as members of the UNIA, are laboring today. This race of ours gives civilization, give art, give science, give literature to the world. But it has been the way with races and nations. The one race stands out prominently in the one century or in the one age. And in another century or age, it passes off the stage of action and another race takes its place. The Negro once occupied a high position in the world. scientifically, artistically, commercially, but in the balancing of the great scale of evolution, we lost our place, and someone other than ourselves occupies the stand we once held. God never intended that man should enslave his fellow, and the price of such a sin or such a violation of heaven's law must be paid by everyone. As for me, because of the blessed past, because of the history I know, so long as there is within me the breath of life and the Spirit of God, I shall struggle on and urge others of our race to struggle on to see that justice is done to the black peoples of the world. Yes, we appreciate the sorrows of the past, and we are going to walk in the present that the sorrows of our generation shall not be perpetuated in the future. On the contrary, we shall strive that by our labors, succeeding generations of our own shall call us blessed, even as we call the generation of the past today. And they indeed were blessed. They were blessed with a patience not yet known to man, a patience that enabled them to endure the tortures and the sufferings of slavery for 250 years. Why? Was it because they loved slavery so? No. It was because they loved this generation more. Isn't it wonderful? Transcendent? What then are you going to do to show your appreciation of this love? What gratitude are you going to manifest in return for what they have done for you? As for me, knowing the sufferings of my forefathers, I shall give back to Africa that liberty that she once enjoyed hundreds of years ago, before our own sons and daughters were taken from our shores and brought in chains to this Western world. No better gift can I give in honor of the memory of the love of my foreparents for me, and in gratitude of the sufferings they endured, that I might be free. No grander gift can I bear to the sacred memory of the generation past than a free and a redeemed Africa, a monument for all eternity, for all times. As by the action of the world, as by the conduct of all the races and nations, it is apparent that not one of them has the sense of justice, the sense of love, the sense of equity, the sense of charity that would make men happy and make God satisfied. It is apparent that it is left to the Negro to play such a part in human affairs. For when we look to the Anglo-Saxon, we see him full of greed, avarice, no mercy, no love, no charity. We go from the white man to the yellow man, and we see the same unenviable characteristics in the Japanese. Therefore, we must believe that the psalmist had great hopes of this race of ours when he prophesied, "Princes shall come out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hands unto God." If humanity is regarded as made up of the children of God, and God loves all humanity, we all know that, then God will be more pleased with that race that protects all humanity and with the race that outrages the children of God. And so tonight, we celebrate this anniversary of our emancipation. We do it not with regret. On the contrary, we do it with an abiding confidence, a hope, and faith in ourselves and in our God. And the faith that we have is a faith that will ultimately take us back to that ancient place, that ancient position that we once occupied when Ethiopia was in her glory. That ends my reading. But now that I have read this piece of work, what does this really mean to me and all of us? As a person born in the Caribbean, there are millions and millions of people in the Caribbean today. Children suffering, people trying to formulate their destinies. And what we are seeing, our peoples are consistently being subjected to rulers who do not have the interests of the people at heart. And we are seeing it in this country. We are seeing it in Africa. And that is what Marcus Garvey means to us. struggling for total liberation of African peoples all over the world. Struggling so that black people must control their destinies. Black people must control their economics, must control their health, must control their culture. But today that seems to be a very far-fetched dream. Many, many African peoples in the Caribbean, in the United States, in Africa, unfortunately, many of us see before our liberation profit, profit, profit. And tonight, I know that Marcus Garvey in his grave is also saying, I'm pleased with some of the people who are struggling for our liberation. But on the other hand, I cannot be pleased when I see so many of us are disregarding the freedom of our people, the freedom to control our own institutions. And as he said, look for me in the whirlwind. And definitely Marcus Garvey is here, and he will be here to stay. Thank you.
Okay, let's hear it again for Maxwell Hayward and Fermi Selassie, their presentation. And once again, I just can't say enough about the students at Medgar College. The young men who are in the program, I simply approached them and asked them, would you like to participate in this program? I am seeing for the first time what they're doing, and they really took it on themselves, rehearsal, put their parts together and doing such a marvelous job. Okay, at this time, there's a record I want you to listen to, pay very careful attention to. Okay, I hope that you were hearing the recording well. That is, the battle's not over. We've got to fight apartheid. That is a piece by Titus Walker. And Titus Walker, who formerly was a student here at Medgar College, the very same Titus Walker will be presenting here at the college a play, a tribute to Malcolm X, by Titus Walker. Perhaps you've seen it advertised. It's been being performed at Lincoln Center at the present time. It will be here in this auditorium on Friday, February 24th, 1989 at 6 o'clock p.m. I know some of you have classes, you're probably in the middle, but it is a play that the student government is bringing here for you, and we want you all to come and support it. Okay, we will continue with our final presentation, Nelson Mandela, and Nelson Mandela is portrayed by Michael Chance. Let's hear it from Michael.
Good day, yeah? Good night, glad to see you all. Before I read my speech, I feel it necessary to affirm or reaffirm to some of you essential facts about South Africa. To assist me are members of the John Oliver Killings Literary Club. Lita, Anna Jones, Charles Setter, and Alicia.
I'll bring to you very briefly a background of South Africa in regards to location, land area, population, population groups, languages, religion, and natural resources. The Republic of South Africa is located on the southernmost tip of Africa. It borders two bodies of water, the South Atlantic and the Southern Ocean. South Africa is made up of 472,494 square miles. South Africa is 3 times larger than the state of California and 2 times larger than the state of Texas. 84% of its population is black, and 16% of its population is white. Reverse these figures. 87% of the land is reserved for whites, and 13% is available to blacks. African population, 27 million. So-called colored, 3 million. Asian, 1 million. White, 5 million. This gives us a total of 36 million. Population groups. Africa, the government of South Africa divides the African population into 10 separate ethnic groups. These groups reside in homelands, so-called colored mixed people, or called Southeast Asian, white, and African blood. Asian, mostly Indians, but today this population group is born solely in South Africa. White make up primarily of 2 groups descended from Europeans. First, 16% Afrikaners, 17th and 18th century settlers from Holland and Germany. 2, 40% English speakers whose ancestors settled in the 19th century. English is official, also African. They also speak Zulu, Swawana, Soto, and other languages. Religions, we have Christianity, Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, and other traditional beliefs. Natural resources and minerals. South Africa is rich in mineral resources, occupying less than 1% of the Earth's land surface. It is the world's 4th largest supplier of non-fuel materials. It has the world's largest known deposits of premium, magnesium, platinum, vanadium, and gold, all minerals which are important to the West because of their strategic, industrial, or economic uses. In addition, South Africa has major reserves of many other valuable minerals, including asbestos, coal, copper, diamonds, iron, nickel, phosphate, silver, uranium, and zinc.
Early black settlements and European intervention into South Africa. It is well documented that Southern Africa has been inhabited since the beginning of mankind's evolution. Early in the 13th century AD, there were African farmers who owned sheep and cattle and cultivated millet and sorghum and fashioned iron tools. When the first permanent European settlers arrived at the Cape of Good Hope in 1652, they were met by African hunters and farmers. The farmers were called Hottentots, and the hunters were called Bushmen by the Europeans, terms that today are considered derogatory and no longer used. These African farmers had a complex culture and highly developed political system. At the same time, a white settler community had moved into the southern western tip of southern Africa, recruited largely by the Dutch East India Company. The employees migrated primarily from the Netherlands and Germany. The Dutch Reformed Church, led by clergy employed by the company, was the only church in the colony. This group gradually formed into a nation, no longer calling themselves Dutch, but Boers, or Afrikaners, whose language had become Afrikaans. Around 1800, the British took over the Cape Colony from the Dutch. In time, thousands of Afrikaners, dissatisfied with the British rule, began to migrate to the most fertile land in the eastern part of South Africa, in what is now known as the Great Turk, which took place in 1830. During that migration, the Afrikaners clashed with many groups of African people, including Ndebele and the Zulu. Meanwhile, by 1870, British farming communities had developed due to the British government's sponsored free passage and land grants for Englishmen. Many professions and trades were dominated by the British descendants in Cape Town. Furthermore, with the discovery of diamonds and gold in 1867, thousands of whites were drawn to South Africa. As South Africa became the principal supplier of the world's diamonds and gold, European imperialism intensified. The British made several attempts to subjugate the Boers republics, the Orange Free State and the Transvaals, where the Afrikaners had settled. The resulting Boer War ended in 1902 with a British victory. The Union of South Africa was founded in 1910 and is dominion of British Empire. The overriding ideology was to create a unified white South Africa, incorporating both the English and Afrikaner traditions.
We should understand at this point why the white residents of South Africa wish to give it up. You know, as she said, South Africa has essential minerals that are necessary for Western domination. It's also important to be aware that these minerals are needed for countries like America to be as powerful as it is today. Gold and uranium are one of the largest imports into the United States. Charles Tessa is going to give you a brief history of apartheid, the system in South Africa.
Apartheid. Apartheid, pronounced apart-hate, means apart or separate in Afrikaans, the language of the dominant white minority group in South Africa. It represents the government policy of legalized racism in the Republic of South Africa. Since white settlement of South Africa began in 1652, the white minority gradually imposed a system of political, economic, and social discrimination against and segregationist of the black majority. This enabled white settlers to gain and maintain control of the land, black labor, political, economic, and military power. The discovery of valuable mineral resources in the mid and late 1800s fueled white efforts to exclude blacks, mostly Africans, from owning land or exerting any voting rights. The 1948 electoral victory of the Afrikaner-dominated Nationalist Party accelerated the extension of segregationist policies in all facets of black life. The party explicitly espoused an ideology of separate development of the races called apartheid. The majority rule in the apartheid system is the division of the races. All South Africans are classified by the color of their skin or by ancestry into one of four major racial groups.